Bam, do it.
Hey, this is Tirzah.
This is Jonathan, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, and put the camera on me, the big guy, because I want you guys to all know my friends, Tirzah and Jonathan. Tirzah and I guess Jonathan too, we grew up across the street from each other. And over the years, you go your own separate ways and everything else. And I always kind of wonder what Tirzah did, because we used to have this great photography class together in high school. And we would joke around. Her and her friend, Kristen, would take off for the whole class and do their hair and things like that, things that high school kids do. And it's funny, Tirzah, today I was at our high school and I was talking to the seniors. And I do this a couple times a year to kind of give them a point of view as to like, hey, this is what life's really about. Like, you're worried about college, and if you're gonna get into college, you're gonna get in somewhere. And if you don't get into your first choice or if there, who cares, right? Because there's so many things that you're going to do. And going to college is going to be a thing you do. But I don't know, by the time you're 28, you're like, yeah, I went to college 10 years ago and I'm past that, right? But one of the other things is kids are desperate to like know what I'm going to be, and I'm going to be this thing. And I don't know if you both started out in design and thinking about home design as a profession, but it's not something your parents are like, that's a good idea. That's a stable field with lots of money and great retirement plans, right? But it also is powerful if you can exit and get to the point where you can make a living at it. So I guess let's talk about like when you guys were young, was this ever a thing? When did it start to become a thing? And what's the support been around that with your family as you guys took on this venture?
So I'll start.
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, that's a lot. We definitely started young, but not as something that we thought, oh, we want to do this. It just kind of happened. We fell into it.
Yeah, there wasn't that much thought involved. I think we just kind of like it was organic. It was
organic, but it was definitely something we both loved to do.
Mm-hmm.
Something we've always loved to do. It's our passion, and it has evolved over the years. Started with a family store called Lacey Ellen, and as the store grew and got lots more clients, people wanted us to do design. It was just a natural evolution. And so here we are all these years later, no more store, but we're doing the design.
Yeah, I think that I actually tried to avoid it. I think I tried to initially, I just wanted to make a shitload of money. And was not really interested in doing design necessarily. But after, I tried the whole corporate thing, design was something that it's just always been a huge part of my life. And so, it happens without it intending to happen. And so, projects sort of came organically and naturally. I mean, I had my first design project when I was 15. And so things just kind of grew from there. And, I think whatever's meant to be is going to be. And that's just what happened. We were meant to do this, and it's just grown from there.
And we're still doing it all these years later.
Yeah.
So many years of this. But we love it. So we're able to do what we love to do and make money at it. And it's been great.
Yeah. Now I don't run from it.
Runs towards it.
When you look at like TV shows like HGTV and all these different places where they have shows that are akin to what you guys do or exactly what you do, you notice that like Ree Drummond's a great example. Ree Drummond, works on a ranch with her family, and she's like, hey, I'm going to cook. I'm going to turn a cooking show together. And that turns into a lifestyle brand. She owns a thing called the Mercantile in downtown Tulsa, like Tulsa. She built this multi-million-dollar business in Tulsa, which is crazy. And then all the other things that come from that, like then you have to have a line of pots and pans. And then, all of these things kind of go into designing this country ranch life that she has. When you guys look at that, at some point, Reed doesn't get to do the things that she wanted to do, be a mom on a ranch cooking food for her family. She becomes this other thing, which is maybe better, but maybe it's not what she wants to be. How does that work for you guys? Like, how do you guys decide between like what's business important and what's artistically important to us so that we have satisfaction in our life? And it's not something that we want to run from because you're like, business meetings, ick. I want to just go figure out X.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's a great question. I think that the funny thing is, I think it sort of relates back to the first question that you asked, because the word that you use, lifestyle, I think that's it's overused now, but I remember growing up hearing it much less frequently, but it being super powerful even back then. Like that's what we do. We live a lifestyle, right? And that's, I think, what people are drawn to. I don't like to think, I hate it when people introduce me or talk about what I do in terms of being like a decorator, or I don't even necessarily really like the word design. It totally is a lifestyle. And I think that's what our clients, what really resonates for them.
Right.
And that's what we end up, helping them to achieve and to create. So what was the question again?
It is a balancing act, though, because when my kids were young, that's when we really kind of got started. We're 10 years apart. So started this when I was 19, and he was kind of following behind me in the store.
Yeah, for me, it was a game then. I mean,
he would literally, I would go and set things up in the store, and he would undo what I was doing. And then I would go back and I would see what he did, and I'd get mad. And
that's
he
what
would
you
laugh.
do to big sisters, right? Like,
Yeah.
But that's how it all started. But it started as something that was very real. It was very much about creating an aesthetic that was practical, that was functional, that worked with my kids, because I started having kids so young. So, it's definitely something that is lifestyle simply because it had to be, because it had no other choice. And then as we evolved with the store and people would come in and they would shop, they would see that it went beyond that. They would ask us, can you do our wedding? Can you help us with my daughter's 16th birthday? So on and so on. And it became more than that.
Yeah, but I think like you were mentioning, for a lot of designers, it sort of happens, or a lot of celebrity designers, it sort of happens in reverse to the way that it's happened for us. I think for us, the lifestyle is what it is, and it's something that we grew up in and has evolved with us as we've evolved. But the design sort of happens as a result of the lifestyle. Whereas for other people, that, like you were just talking about, it's sort of the reverse, and so then they've got to sort of keep things compartmentalized, and they don't necessarily get to do as much of what they love doing, and it sort of becomes more about the business. And for us, it's just, it literally is a lifestyle. It literally is who we are. And so I don't ever feel like like, oh shit, today I've got to do, the paperwork side of things or whatever. Like, it's just,
it's just all part of it.
Yeah. It's just who we are. I wish I could give you like a better, like an equation for it or something.
But it is an equation, right? And so when you fall into this design world and it kind of just happens for you and it fits, you don't think about budgeting. Like, oh man, I cannot wait to try to figure out social media. Right. Oh man, I can't wait to be on TikTok and Pinterest. And oh gosh, wouldn't it be great to have a Snapchat? But these things become reality. I mean, I've got to do that stupid stuff for this show because you have to exist on platforms so that you can get more work and be notable. And you look around and you see, and I'm so terrible at all. I know there's those twin guys that build homes, and down by me in Orange County, you got Barbie and the other guy who, like, she wears it's like diamond ring t-shirt and jeans, and she's like, and it's the same. Like, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, you watch it and you're like, they're going to say subway tiles in the next 5 minutes. She's going to be disgusted by what is really a very nice backyard.
Yeah.
And so there are all these different shows. And so there must be aspirations, at least in some way, to become something like that. Like, this is the top of the game, but maybe that isn't important to you or to some other designer. Like, how do you guys balance the temptation of, wow, they're on TV and they are selling, hot gloves, for reaching into an oven. It's like, and it says happy on it or whatever it is. It's got to be so tempting. Like, that's just a revenue stream that I'd love to have, but it's not the heart of what you guys do.
Well, I mean, I think that, I would be lying if I said that, I'd turn down if somebody wanted to pay me to slap my name on a pan or a toilet seat or something, that I'd turn it down. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind, but I think that the difference really is that that's not what drives us. That's not the motivation. And so when those opportunities come up, or when those needs arise in the business, I think, again, what's important to us is just staying true to what we do. And like I said, it's that lifestyle piece that's super organic. And so, that's not, I don't know. I don't feel pressured to do that. I don't feel pressured to like chase after those things that I think other people get caught up in. Because again, it's not something that I necessarily have to, I don't do this like a job. I don't do this like it's not work for us.
Well, plus we did have opportunities back in the day. I mean, we've been featured in different magazines and on different HGTV TV shows, and we wrote a book.
But all of those again came naturally.
Yeah,
like
we didn't seek that out. It actually came to us.
Right.
So.
None of that was, like you talked about the TikTok and the TikTok. You talked about the TikTok and the Facebook. Like it's so not interesting to me to chase after that for the sake of $1.
Right.
I'm more interested in living my life the way that we live our lives, and I think it's beautiful, and it apparently a lot of other people do too. And again, I think that's really what they're drawn to. It's not that we've got this amazing gimmick or personality that we're sort of throwing in people's faces all the time. It's not about that. It's about a look, an aesthetic, a lifestyle that people are responding to. That's really what it is.
That lifestyle thing, right? It's and if it's authentic, it means you're truly living this thing. And right now, Patrick is handing out shots, and I didn't get one yet. And I want to know where my shot is. And Patrick is such a great host. He's so great, Slan. And so I love the Dairy Girls. I love that show. You guys got to watch that thing. It's great. The lifestyle of what you guys do and turning that into a vision for somebody else. You've got to blend. Obviously, they dig your guys' vibe, right? But every project is different, taste change, and there's so much cliche in design that you see. Like if you go to an Airbnb, I promise there's going to be a sign in the kitchen that says "Manja," and there's going to be all these things that are very tropey, right? Yeah, all that stuff, right? And I'm not saying those things are bad, but how do you do something different that, like for a while, and probably still the case, really a lot of white country ranch style with black accents and carpets and pillows and stuff. And you're like, okay, everybody's done that now. So we're going to do something else. And we're going to go country style again. And it's going to be raw oak cabinets or whatever it is, right? All these things that go in and out of vogue, but you don't want to be what's on Pinterest. You guys want to be that things people, they go, look at my kitchen, right?
Yep.
How do you find that? How do you put your finger on that pulse?
I mean, that has a lot to do with what's happening just in life in general, from fashion, right? To, you're inspired by things online, whether it's movies or TV shows. There's always things happening that you kind of look and you're drawn to and you're inspired by, and you go, oh, look at that. And, I want to pull that in next time, or I want to focus on that color next time, or I like that aesthetic, or, you're always looking at things that are helping you to evolve and change what you do, because you have to be able to evolve in order to be relevant. You can't stay stagnant. So I think that when it's a natural ability, which is something that we pride ourselves on, we do not have any official training in this. We've just been doing this based on the fact that we love to do it. I think that there's an ability to kind of key into those things.
Right.
Yeah. My degree has nothing to do with design. But again, my degree was something that I was super fascinated by. And I think that that's really what inspires me, or where I find inspiration, is just in my life and where I'm at that particular moment in time, and the things that are affecting me and impacting me. And, I know that I went through a really big phase where religious sort of undertones or religious iconography, artwork, played a huge part in my personal sort of aesthetic in homes. And, that happened to be the same time that I was in college getting my degree in religious studies. I definitely don't look to other people for inspiration in terms of design. I think it comes from our lives, what we're living, what we're going through at that moment. And our design has evolved immensely. My God, I think of some of the stuff, like I said, that first project when I was 15, holy Moses, I look at some of those pictures now and I'm like, it's so embarrassing. Yeah, and we're just universes away today, and so and I know 10 years down the line it'll be universes from where it is now.
Yeah,
And
but there's still always certain things that are kind of key, like practicality, for one. For me, especially being a mom of 4, that's sort of where it all started for me.
sure,
So
but
that's
in terms
very
of
much.
like but in terms of like the like little inspirations,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, like I totally can see that house that you were describing,
Mhm.
with the
Live,
black
laugh, love.
accents and the live life. Yeah, I totally can see that. But yeah, those things, I think those are always changing. There's always things that we're super in love with for a period of time, and then sort of phase
then
out
we
of
move
it
on.
and move on to the next thing.
Mhm.
It's like clothing or like haircuts,
Right.
hopefully for most of us.
Like all things artistic, there's a cycle, right? And so right now there's what we would call mom jeans from the 90s are back in style, super high-waisted pants, right? And they go in and out of vogue. For a while they're cool, and then they change, and then the pants drop down to the hips, and then we're like, hey, that's butt crack, and then it goes back up again, and it goes to something else, right? It's always evolving, but you guys have been in the business long enough to be like, oh, here comes these, gold accented faucets, like
Absolutely.
this 90s look, right? These things come back into style, and then it'll go back to some other kind of farm thing and whatever it's going to be, right? So keeping your finger on that, is it as easy as just being 5 years ahead of what's 25 years ago?
I don't think so. I don't. I think that's too formulaic. I mean, I'm just at a place now where I'm starting to see things from when I was a teenager in like the late 90s, early 2000s that I'm like, holy crap, that's coming back around, and so that's big in my brain right now, but I don't think it's necessarily like as simple as everything comes back around. Things come
No,
back around
definitely not. And
in
I
a
think
new
it's
evolved
you
way.
have to be able to key in on sort of the things that are going to maintain a certain classic aspect.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in my house, I have a lot of antique pine, and I got it when my kids were babes, and now they're in their 30s. So I still have it. I've had it all these years, and it's now coming back
Yeah.
around. It's sort of making this whole resurgence.
Yeah.
But for me, it was never something that I was like, oh, let me get rid of that now.
Yes.
You maintain the classics, you maintain the things that are going to have the longevity. And that's the key, is knowing what those things are. Generally, you can play with the accents, and the accents are the things that come and
I
go.
would agree.
The foundational pieces, the major
I love
furniture
that.
pieces, those are the pieces that you're going to hold on to. And so you want to be selective with what you're doing and choose the pieces that are going to have that long-term effect, so that you're going to hold on to them for a long time. Ultimately, that's the goal, right? We don't need to be changing our stuff around all the time. There's no need for that.
Yeah, I agree. I will agree with that.
Great.
I think you're right.
So glad. Thank you.
I think you're right, but I think it's
Yes.
an important point because I think more and more, again, I'm sort of becoming aware that there's this whole desire for everything to be fast. It's fast fashion, and
gosh.
that even applies to the home industry. People want things cheap, they want things quick, and they want things disposable ultimately. And really, that I think at its core is really counter to a
bad.
lot of what we do.
Yes.
I look for pieces that I'm in love with, that I know I can hang on to, if not for life, for a very long time.
Which
Yeah.
means they need
I'm
to be quality.
Yeah, I'm not interested in
Press board.
something that I can snap together. And I know some of my friends will plop down on it and it'll snap apart, and then I'll have to replace it. So yeah, I think you're right. Those classic pieces and some of the classic elements are I think essential for like creating a foundation that you can build on.
Without a doubt.
Along with the style, like pillows and colors and that kind of thing, something like as simple as charcuterie has become a very important thing. Like, it equals home, and then that'll move on, and then it'll become something else. But our neighbor put this charcuterie countertop together. It's got to be 10 feet long and like 4 feet wide, and I don't know, 40 hours of like rolling and sticking and prettifying and everything. But at some point, that won't be the thing, right? It'll be something else that equals home. But to Tirzah's point, that there's classic things that you can just leave alone and build off of a foundation.
Yes.
And Pete would submit, if you're changing the rooms in your home at a pace that's like fast, you're sort of taking down what it means to be a home, and you're really obsessed with change all the time. And a home needs to have classic things that you like. I think about my grandparents' home, and the two chairs that they sat in were the same chairs the entire time, right? Their China hutch, and no one wants China hutches anymore. No one wants China. No one wants silver. Like, we just don't want that stuff anymore. But those were like classic things that they had saved up and maybe was handed down to them. And so there are these things that are the backbone of design. And we're talking homes. If you're doing some tech companies, eating area, that's going to be totally different and maybe more modern and maybe more disposable. How do you put your finger on what your clients want? Like, I know you guys have your own taste and it works, but you also have to vibe with where they're at, or maybe you don't,
Absolutely.
and you just demand freedom.
Well, I mean, I think, and I've been really vocal about this with a lot of new clients. I think to a certain extent, I do personally.
Demand
I
freedom.
do sort of demand freedom. Yeah, because like Tirzah said, I'm not your standard designer. I don't have, training in AutoCAD or, whatever other programs designers use to slap things together really quickly. What I do comes from inside. It comes from the heart, and again, I think that's what people resonate with, and that's what people want from us.
But there are usually those things that a client has that are sentimental. For example, maybe it is the grandma's dresser or some sort of cabinet or some photos or some art. There are those things that usually a client wants in a space that you try to work in and make it work with everything else that you're doing, because people want to have that level of comfort and feeling
familiarity to it,
exactly. So we generally have to deal with that to some degree, but obviously we are going to encourage that in a way that makes the most sense for the space and creates the overall aesthetic that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think what we do is really about balance, right? It's like a constant balancing act. You're taking a space and trying to balance the needs with the wants, the look of it with the function of it. You're trying to balance the client's desire for whatever it is, if it's an aesthetic or if it's, like Tirzah was mentioning, a particular piece of furniture that they want to have worked into a space, with really what is necessary from an aesthetic perspective or functional perspective in the space. It's just all about balance. And so that's really, I think,
It is
what we're
a
good
balancing
at.
act.
I think that's what we're good at, though. And
Absolutely.
And I think that,
The other thing that we're really good at, though, is also the details.
right.
And that's what a lot of designers don't offer.
I would agree.
They come in and they create the space with the furniture, the larger pieces, the foundational pieces, but they don't add the personality.
Yeah, I was going to say the details are what sort of personalize the space.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
what makes the space your own. That's what speaks to who you are. And that's what we are
That's what
very
takes
good
the
at.
space from a showroom to a home.
Yes.
Without
a doubt. Without a doubt.
Tirzah, when we were young, there were showrooms as a way to buy, like, hey, this family room, right? And in these things, and I know you're going to be familiar with this, you might see a porcelain leopard or a porcelain Afghan dog that's like 3 feet tall, maybe a string light with oil gently dripping down this, part of a Grecian chair. Yeah, right. And it was super tacky and cheesy. Maybe that light comes back into style and probably has at some point, but I don't see anybody putting like a porcelain panther under their coffee table or a porcelain Afghan dog in the corner. Like, that has totally gone away. And I doubt you can find anybody like stoked for that, right? So there are things that disappear. And is it because the design of that time was retail in this case? And it was like, it's just here's the fall thing, and they put it out there and it was a little more disposable? Or what are your thoughts on like how that has changed? Because you don't go to Mervyn's or JCPenney or Sears to buy a living room anymore. Or maybe you go to IKEA, but you don't go to these department stores for that. So yeah.
Definitely for our design, we are not about buying an entire grouping that matches. We're not into matching anything. We're into.
I think we really appreciate collecting.
Yes, exactly. And that helps a space to feel more found, more aged over time, and gives it more personality. So we're not going to recommend that to anybody by any means. And that way it also gives you flexibility when because spaces transition all the time. People's families change and evolve, and their needs change and evolve. So when the pieces can be broken up, you can move them to different parts of your home.
Right. Which that's something that's one of the things that I think we tell a lot of our clients is I encourage people, buy things that you love. Don't buy things for a space. I'll get clients that'll ask a lot, around like the specifics of a particular piece of furniture, and well, is it going to fit in this space? And, I don't know if I should get it because I don't know if it's going to fit. And dude, do you love it?
Yeah.
If you love it, we'll find a space
Figure
for
it
it in
out.
your home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because that's what's important, that it, it touches you on some level and you're excited by it, inspired by it.
And not
we'll
only
find a
that,
home
when you're
within your home.
living with it and you love it, you're going to be happy with it. You're going to be happy to be in that space. You're going to be happy to come home. You want to surround yourself with things that you love, that have meaning, that are special to you.
Totally.
No, I love that. Yeah, you do. In my tent, my studio, and it's under redesign and revisioning right now because the tent's kind of failing and I got to decide if I'm going to keep it or not. But my favorite thing in there, I bought at IKEA. It was a pillow cover, and it has like a desert themed color thing and little camels on it. And I'm like, this whole vibe I'm going for in the tent. A lot of my professional life was worked out of a tent because I worked overseas in deserts and that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, it's my favorite thing, right? Like in there. And it's just a dumb thing. And there's an Army Foot Locker that's beat up and authentic because it's been around for all these different times. And so there's a couple of touches, and it feels like home. And like, I'm not a designer. I just like, that's old, that's Army, that's great. That's what a vibe I'm going for. Yeah, and it matters, right? And I didn't give a whole lot of thought to that, but there's also because it's a podcast studio, it has a function. And so you have all these things you have to balance. Like it's a tent, so it's hot as hell in there during the summertime. And so how do I manage that? Like I'm sweating, the light is crazy, the sun is so powerful. All of these things I have to balance. And then what my friends are always trying to give me advice on this. They don't understand. Like my engineer friends are like, why don't you coat it in like, some kind of reflective surface? And I'm like, I know that works for you, Mr. Engineer. However, my girlfriend will not allow there to be a spaceship in the backyard. And on the inside, I can't have, like, I have to have light come through. I just don't need as much. So I have like all these compromises, and it has to be aesthetically pleasing. So I've got to worry about form, sound, aesthetically pleasing, what's allowed, in terms of like, this is not my space. I'm sharing it with my family. So all of these things go in there to create these complex things. Oh, and by the way, like everything else, I don't have much of a budget, right? And like we talked about three things. When I was a handyman, these three things were always like, you can have two of three: fast, gorgeous, cheap, but you can't have all three, And like, especially like it's a holiday, it's up five flights of steps. All of these things cost more money, and I have to bill you for that. And so all of this stuff goes into finding that compromise for your client, whatever your client is that you need, right? So talk a little bit about how you balance these needs. You got a husband and a wife. Oh, by the way, we're running a business out of the house. You have to, all this stuff. And you're like, how do you map that?
Well, I think the fact that we're doing a lot of restaurant projects now, a lot of commercial projects, specifically restaurants, but that's sort of a whole other world for us. And it's definitely that thing where the practicality comes into play, the operational end comes into play. It can't just be about what's pretty.
Yeah,
it has to definitely function, and it has to function on a whole different level compared to residential. So
but I think the client is the one that ultimately prioritizes the project for you. They're going to tell you if form is more important than function, or vice versa. They're going to be the ones that are going to tell you if a particular table needs to be in the space, or if a particular color needs to be worked in, or, they're the ones that are going to dictate that. Like Tirzah said earlier, I think, once they do clarify that, then we sort of guide it towards an aesthetically pleasing ultimate destination. But they're the ones that really determine if something is going to take priority in a project.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. We definitely are learning. It's constantly evolving for us too, as far as learning, as far as there's no sort of ceiling that we've hit at this point. We're always learning. We're always growing. There's always more. There's always more that we figure out.
Well, and it's, again, because it's something we enjoy, there's constantly like a hunger, right? Like you're always hungry to see the next thing. You're always hungry to experience, feel, touch the next thing. Like all of those pieces of design are exciting to me, and they're the things that make me want to experience more of it. So as a result, you're just naturally always evolving.
evolution's important and all this stuff, and trying to balance all of these needs. It's all very interesting. But at some point, you guys have to deliver. So what's your dynamic between the two of you? Do you like when John and I started the show together, when we were doing handyman stuff all over the Bay Area, right? We got to the point where we could take a complex multi-part IKEA job. And so I would start opening the packages as fast as I could, putting screws in front of him in the order for the direction. Then he just zip, zip, zip all along, right? And then if we landed it perfectly, which we normally did, I'd be going like this after throwing away all the trash and the space is completely clean and he's setting the last desk in place. And that's just that. Maybe it's painting, whatever it was, but we tried to not in any way, like he hated the way I packed the truck. I hated the way he packed the truck, but one of us had to do it and that was it. And we were able to let go of like, I'm not the one packing the truck this time. It's going to be packed. It's going to be tied down. It's not how I would do it, but done. Right. And so we had that ability to stay out of each other's way. I don't know that you guys were afforded that luxury. It feels like you guys have to sort of sort out what needs to be sorting out together. Am I right?
You are to a certain degree. We definitely respect each other a lot. So
Mhm.
we're constantly going back and forth. What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah.
What's your and if there are those things that one of us feels stronger on versus the other, then usually we kind of give in. The other person gives in.
Mm.
But I think that we're both really good about, knowing who's going to do what, whose opinion is more important in this moment. And in general, we're very much on the same vibe.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of disconnect between us.
no, I
Like,
think
we
that it's
usually
kind of
have a
like
very similar.
I look at it
even-
like we're two or better than one. I mean,
Mhm.
that's how I see it. We're just bringing that much more to the equation.
Yeah, there are even times when, one of us might come up with an idea that the other one didn't yet arrive at. And when that idea is sort of surfaced, then it's like, oh yeah, duh. Like,
Mhm.
it's not like there's not a
There's no
competition.
competition.
There's not a. I don't think that there's any sort of a distrust, and so and I think that that's weird, and it's sort of an anomaly in terms of working relationships. But I also think we're incredibly lucky, and that definitely has it's a big part of why I think our projects are as harmonious as they are. We don't have
It's
a lot
just a
of
good
contention.
thing. Yeah, no, we
it's just-
definitely we vibe together very well.
And the older I get, the more mellow I get. So I'm like, whatever. All right, sure.
That mellowness though, that's important because there's elegance to that, right? So you're adding elegance to what you do. You don't need to go through these extra steps to get there. Like, you know what? B is as good as A. I may want A, but you know what? B is going to do the job.
Well,
right?
and I think also it has a lot to do with, like I said, ultimately, there is like an implicit trust there, and I think you have to have that.
Yes.
I think the mellowness is a result of that, after years and years and years of doing this and, even beyond that, growing up together, I don't ever doubt that what my sister is going to do is ultimately going to be amazing, so.
And vice versa.
So it makes it easy to sort of relinquish and just be like, okay, whatever.
When you feel often like you're like, God, I wish I could duplicate myself.
Yeah.
If I could just duplicate myself,
Yes.
I would. That's how it
I
feels.
love
We're each other somewhat duplicated.
Uh-huh.
But I know that if I fall or if I need to be held up, he's going to be there to do it,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So it's just a win-win.
A win-win. No, that's fantastic. One of the things I want to ask you about is you guys have to be in the marketplace, right? This is like stuff that you guys have to love.
Yeah.
And I know, Christy Michelini was the other designer that's been on the show. She works out of Alamo, right? She does really high-end home design. And she would employ me to go like, hey, Pete, you need to go to the furniture market in San Francisco and pick up this, what turns out to be a $10,000 tree stump. But it's waxed. And I'm like, all right, it's a tree stump, but okay. And so she's trusting me to bring this $10,000 thing. And then I would say half the time the client gets it and they're like, no, thanks. And so then I would get paid again to return this stump, and so I loved it because it was easy work for me. You're taking a desk, putting it in the back of the truck, driving it from here to there, and that's it. And for them, they're like, this is very precious. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. I got blankets and all that other stuff. But I would get a chance to walk around in there, and I'm like, it's like walking into Tutankhamun's tomb. Like, I see amazing things everywhere, and some of it is enormously expensive, and I don't know what the names are associated with it. We're just like, that is a tree stump. It's $10,000. I can go get you one right now in Oakland. They're cutting down a tree, but some of it was truly like amazing artwork that you're putting in your house, and it's going to be a centerpiece for something. So how do you guys stay in the marketplace? Where is that marketplace? Do you both have to do it? Do you go on field trips together? How do you guys fill your well with ideas and freshness?
So I think you're always on the lookout, right? I mean, at least I think we are. We are so visually oriented. The minute you open your eyes, you're taking in potential inspiration, right? And potential opportunities for new sources and new vendors and new ideas. And, obviously there are the trade shows and, different outlets that we tap regularly. But in terms of inspiration, I think it comes from everywhere.
Constantly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that there's one trade show or one resource that we use more than any others, because I don't think it would be accurate.
No, and the whole face of that is evolving all the time anyway.
Yeah.
So we're just
Yeah,
going with the flow as far as that part. But in terms of new stuff, it's, you can meet somebody around the corner who knows somebody who's an uncle who has, some sort of new thing that they do or import or so it's constant. You're constantly looking for things. You're constantly finding out about things.
And I think that's sort of more exciting to me when we find those things that are off the beaten path, things in places that you wouldn't expect, than when you go to, the design center in San Francisco and find an amazing piece of furniture or artwork in a gallery that's there or in a showroom, where you're going to find that. It's sort of more exciting when you find something that you dug out of somebody's attic or whatever.
Right.
So.
But it's also fun to find artists, to find local artists. Yeah. And having said that, we also work with a lot of the same people that we've been working with for many years. So it's just sort of a balancing act between, maintaining the old relationships and with people that are as well evolving, because that's important.
Right.
And then as finding new people,
and
finding new opportunities.
And I think it's really important to say that, I'm a firm believer in shopping for beauty rather than a price tag or a label. I think you can find things that are just as valuable and just as worth in terms of aesthetics, like I said, in somebody's attic as you can in some showroom. We've done spaces for celebrities, intimate personal spaces like their bedrooms, and you would think that the budgets there would allow for all kinds of crazy, amazing purchases, and they do. But that's not to say that everything that we ended up purchasing came from some crazy, ridiculous resource that, had 6 and 7 figure, price tags and everything.
Besides the fact that everybody loves a deal.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's true. But
I mean,
even that aside, like I don't think that that beauty is related to a price tag or a label for that matter.
Absolutely.
You you must collect these artists, right? And we are living in a marvelous time where you actually can go on Pinterest, or you can go on Etsy, or you can go on Instagram. So we had a guy in the show, and he is a second generation surfboard shaper. And he puts his hands on the foam and all the resins, and he makes these beautiful boards, and they're functional, right? But he also can make, he made his own camper shell for his truck, because he can make anything out of his hands and a variety of media to work with. And I think it's endless what he can do. He takes old resin that's like waste, and he turns it into earrings or chopsticks or all these crazy things, right? And so you have access to that. You can blow someone's mind, like, I want like a surfboard type theme thing that doesn't exist. Well, it can exist, and it costs not that much money, because this is a custom item, so you can make that happen. Or I'm thinking about in Benicia, there's a guy who he got so busy making things out of wood, bowls and that kind of thing, that all he does now is make things out of wood. And he's like a true hands-on artisan making these incredible things. And he is 4 miles that way, right? And so you have access to these incredible people who do incredible things. And I think and I'm not you guys, but I think if you bring that to your client, like someone here in Vallejo, and you're like, hey, we want to do this, and we're going to bring in some local artists they're going to be like, hell yeah. They were going to jump at that because they'd rather have that's truly unique than get something from, I'm just going to be silly and say Bruner's or somewhere like that doesn't exist anymore. Because I'm not talking down to any kind of store, but you do have access to Brad Adams, who makes these things out of wood. You have Josh Martin. You can go out and get these things.
Absolutely. I think that's fun too. New projects bring new needs,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes you're not even aware of what you're going to need and you have to seek it out. And before you know it, you've found a new resource.
Well, and back to the whole idea of, buying things that you love and sort of not super embracing the whole idea of fast anything. I love the idea of buying from artisans and craftsmen over big box retail stores. I think we have to do that. And I think the opportunity that we had in owning our own business sort of, cultivated and fostered that appreciation in me for small businesses and the passion project that they are. And so,
small businesses are the inspiration really for the big box people or for often some of the big designers. It's the small businesses that are ones.
We would get, I won't name names, but we would get a lot of big box, the creative teams from big box stores that would come and frequent our boutique for inspiration ideas. And on occasion, we spoke to people, again, who worked at for big box creative teams that would tell us that they had our book in their inspiration library at their headquarters. So, it is the small businesses that are really driving things. It's just, unfortunately, I think right now with our economy, they're not the ones that are benefiting the most. No. But that's all the more reason why I love shopping there. Mm-hmm.
One of the guys I picked up as a handyman was Howard's Doors down the road in Fairfield. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but you can say, here's my door problem. And they're like, measure this, measure that, measure this. Where do you want it? Okay, good. And they would make the whole thing. It was like magic. And my client would be over the moon. You're like, how did you make this door so fast? I'm like, I talked to Howard. He just makes doors all day long. And it was so easy for him to do it. You can give him any kind of complexity because he just makes doors. And it was like no big deal. Beveled, whatever you wanted, he could do all of it. And it was such a money maker for me because I could make a door show up. And if I needed it to be fast, they could make it super fast, right? But that kind of a relationship, that must have netted me thousands of dollars. I'm like, oh, you have this door, it's a problem? That problem is solved. I'll tell you what it's going to cost. Now, like, I don't care what it costs. Just bring it to me. And then so I would call Howard up and he's got, take care of it, done. And so those kind of vendors, it's great to be able to lean on those guys.
Absolutely.
And for them, it's like, yeah, of course I'll make you this door. We've got 4 of them right now. You can come get, and you're like, show up the same day with a door that's perfect for their problem. Oh my God. So you guys must have people like that where you're like, this person is just so money for us every single time. Like tile. Oh my God, tile for a handyman is so hard because you're like, I'm going to go to this tile store 3 times because it's never right the first time. You try, but there's no way to do it right. So what are some of your go-to things that you guys do, whatever it is, whether you're designing some kind of party element or a restaurant or a home? Who are your go-to vendors?
Oh my God. Well, not naming names, but we definitely have our resources.
Yeah, I think we try to have sort of a go-to, like you said, I think in
so many
almost
aspects.
Every medium. Like we've got somebody that we work with that does metal work for us. We've got somebody that does upholstery. We've got a woodworker. We've got a cabinet maker. We've
Handyman.
got several people that do all sorts of different or specialize in different, wall finishes. And I think you need those. That'll make or break you in our
people
industry,
who
right?
hang wallpaper.
Yeah.
People. I mean, there's just so many painters. But having said that, we're always looking for new people because you just never know. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. So,
well, and I think the people who are really good at what they do, oftentimes you'll find are really specialized. And so, they might hang wallpaper, but they only hang this type of wallpaper. And, and so.
And they're super busy.
Yeah.
Right. This is a thing I wanted to ask because you can again, like fast, cheap, great. Right. Okay. Well, but that guy's not available.
Yeah.
Right. That person's booked out for 6 months. I can get in front of him. It's going to cost you $5,000 to buy this guy's time. And some people don't care. They're like, buy it, done, good. But sometimes you got to go find somebody else. How do you guys take that leap and go, we're going to go try this guy, Ricky, who hangs wallpaper. We never tried him before. And this is a big client. I mean, how do you guys wrap your heads around that?
I
Oof.
save a lot of. Like I'm my own guinea pig a lot. You know, I'll test people in my own space before I'll recommend them out to clients. I feel like if I'm working with a client in their home, I want to be able to stand behind what I'm putting in there, not just in terms of the product, but also in terms of the work that's being done in the space. And so I test a lot in my own space.
And sometimes, though, we have to say to people, we don't have this other person that we normally would work with because of timing. This is what we've got available. Are you willing?
Right.
You know, sometimes you just have no choice but to be out there. But those opportunities are those times are rare, but they do happen sometimes.
It does happen. Yeah. Even last night, I was speaking with a client, and it actually was about a website, you know, that I hadn't used before, but they consistently come up in terms of looking for the specific product that I was looking for at the top of the list for, you know, the most affordable. And this client, I was positive was her top priority was price. And so, you know, I presented her with this website, but I was really transparent about it. You know, look, I haven't worked with them before. You know, I can't vouch for them, but I can tell you in terms of price, you know, if that's what the priority is, this is going to be
the best option,
the best at this point. So we'll see how that ends up panning out. But you know, I think you got to be honest with people, because we can't, you know, we're not going to know everybody that's out there.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things I learned, I learned two things. So let's talk about these. One, Christy taught me. She's like, hey, you need to double your prices for what you're doing because you're great at it and you're just not charging enough. And you're terrified. You're like, I'm not going to get any business, right? But then she was right. I'm like, well, I'm listening to her because she's doing well, and I'm just going to charge twice. Like, charge me twice as much. And then she would say, hey, it's Friday afternoon. Can you go to the design market and go pick up this stump? And you should double bill me for it because it's Friday afternoon, and I know what that means to go to San Francisco and come back. And then I'm going to pay that. And so she taught me to like charge way more than I thought I was necessary. And it was funny because my clients would say, I saw that you were the most expensive, but I also saw your reviews. And I focused. John would do most of the handiwork, and I posted, and John could do either one, right? I cannot, I'm not that handy, but I could go to the client and say, so we had a lady, it's so funny. She's in Danville, and she's got this light that's like 25 feet in the air in her stairwell, and there's no way to get to it. And so she's like, can you change this light? And I'm like, yes, I can. I have no idea how to do it, but I'm going to make this light change. And then, so I look at it, and I'm looking at this case, it was my buddy Jeff, and I'm looking at Jeff, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, we can do this. He's like, yeah, we can do it. And so we kind of hash out our plan. And then I'm like, all right, I need to take care of this. So I go to her and I say, hey, we can 100% change this light. We know how we're going to do it. I need you to go get coffee. I don't want you in the house.
I need you to go get coffee.
And she's like,
awesome.
right. And so here's how we did it. And this is no shit, 100% true story. And you know Jeff Carl, right? So we have an extension ladder, but there's nowhere to put it because if you put it on any wall, it's just going to be a mess. And so we're on the stairwell. We put the ladder in upper of the stair, and I come in as the scaffold. I'm pretty strong, right? So, and I don't have to hold all the weight. Those stairs are doing the weight. I'm just holding up like 10% of it. But we don't want her seeing that. And Jeff is not a small human. He's a big human. And so he goes up there, and you know, and it was never for once a dangerous thing, except for it's extraordinarily dangerous, you know?
Yeah.
But we did it, and it came down. That lady's like, I don't know how you did it. I'm like, you don't want to know how we did it, but it's done. And the next time you have this problem, give me a call. Here, it's $150. She's like, I don't care. I'm glad it's done, you know? And so sometimes
that was a good price.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to go to these lengths to do something. At least in my field, you're like, I don't want you here. Like, so a lot of times I would do work in the morning like an elf. I'm like, hey, I'm going to come in at 3 a.m. I'm going to put all this stuff together. And when you get here, it's be like magic.
Yes.
And people loved that.
Oh, yes.
I love to say to the office manager, like the young college graduate lady, you know, she's like 110 pounds, tiny little person. And she's got, can you go to IKEA? Yes, I can. I'll bring everything to you. You'll settle up later. It'll all be built. I want you to worry about something besides this, because this is done and handled. And they would be like, are you serious? And I'm like, I am serious. And you know what they did after I solved their problem? They call me back, and they call me back, and they call me back, and they call me back all the time. So you guys must have these things where you're just like, you are so confident in your ability to do the job that you can remove all of that worry. That's I found to be the most powerful thing on my end. Is that similar for you guys?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think
100%.
I can't even think of the last install we did with the client on site.
No.
Right.
We always
We
tell them
to
Yeah.
go away.
Like,
Go away.
disappear.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't want them in the process because most people are not going to appreciate the process
Or
they're
they'll
going to
ask a
freak
million
out. They're
questions.
going to be like,
Mm,
what
yeah.
about, why is that?
Yeah,
It's just, no, you want them away and you want them to come back when it's all done.
Yeah.
That's the ideal.
Even in our commercial work, like we were doing restaurant installs the other night at like 3 a.m, like
Yeah.
you said. Yeah, because you just you can't the clients and or other people that don't need to be there just
Yeah.
get in the way. And and they worry, and they, like you said, can you imagine if she'd seen you on the ladder, like
Oh, she would lose her mind.
yeah,
Oh,
she would
not
have
good.
flipped,
Yeah.
Not
you
good.
know. But she came in and saw the result, and it was perfect, right?
Right.
Like that's the best thing you can hope for. Just
Right.
get out of the way,
And
let us do our thing.
The scary part
and
is
then
that
come
most
back.
often you have some sort of an issue that pops up that you have to like deal
Every
with.
time.
Like, oh my God, I wasn't anticipating that.
Right.
And the last thing you need is for your client to be there in the midst of that.
Yes.
So you want to just handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
They leave, they come back, it's done.
Yeah.
That's how you want it. It's like Christmas for them.
Oftentimes too, I think over the years we've realized, it's better to come over prepared than under prepared. And
Yeah.
so we'll oftentimes show up with a ton of shit,
Yeah.
and if a client saw that walking in, they would freak
Yeah.
the hell out.
Yeah.
They'd be like, what they'd just be seeing dollar signs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's because we know that something's going to go wrong, something's not going to fit, something's going to fit, but too well. You can't anticipate what's going to happen, and so you
Better
always
to
need
be
that extra,
over-prepared.
yeah,
Yeah.
that extra cushion. And
Yep.
yeah, so
This is reminding. So a lot of the work I would do would be creating their design,
Yeah.
right? And they wouldn't understand the process, like you were saying, Tirzah. So one of them was it was Teespring, and they're like, we have these 40 pictures, whatever it is, and we have them in this grid. We know the grid's all laid out, and we just need you to hang them. It's no big deal. And I'm like, you think this is no big deal? This is a San Francisco building. There's not one flat wall in this entire city, and I've got to hang these things, and I've got to figure out how to make your dream a reality. And this is going to take me hours. And I'm like, hours? What? Like, it's 28 holes or whatever it was, right? The guy said he knew how many holes it was going to be. And I'm like, it's actually more holes than that. And I have to make it work. And I can't even miss by 1/8 of an inch. Like, I've got to be exact. And what you envision and what's practical are not the same thing. And so one of the things I learned was that there are many kinds of level. There's level to the ceiling, level to the bubble, level to the floor, and level to the eye.
Yes.
Which one do you want me to pick? Well, level. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. You can't just say that. Like, and then I would do it like, this is absolutely not level.
Yeah.
But it's level to the eye. If you think it messes with you and is not level, then we'll change it to level to the ceiling and see if that works. And and that would blow their minds that there was more than one kind of level.
Yep.
But I'm like, I promise there is. And sometimes level to the floor is the answer.
Yeah.
Even though it's nowhere near the floor, it's the one place where like it jives, right? So that makes total sense, right? Especially like when you have like a brick wall and like it's just herky jerky and everything. What are some of those things where you can bring reality, like, of the situation? You hang 40 pictures in close proximity, they have to be tight, unless you're like, make it funky, and that's different, right? And that still takes hours to do.
Hanging pictures is a fucking nightmare.
Yes.
Right.
Because,
But usually we go level to the eye. That's usually
I'm
what
not
we
even
do.
talking about the level piece. I'm talking about, like, have you ever tried to hang a collage wall, and do you know the nightmare it is to try and find
Lighting.
studs and
Oh my
not
God.
make
Yeah.
a million holes? And
Right.
that's one thing that I cringe every time I think about a client watching me do that,
Yeah.
because you hit a nail in the wall, you make a hole in their wall that they just paid to have painted, and and they're thinking that's the hole, and you hang the picture and it's 3 inches too low or 2
Yeah.
inches too high or 4 inches to the right, whatever it is. Yeah, that's a nightmare. So, and then but again, they come when it's done and it looks awesome and they're
Right.
super psyched. But if
Yeah.
you pulled all those pictures off the wall and they saw all the holes that are behind the picture,
Yeah.
yeah, that is, picture hanging is a fucking beast.
It really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say in general, to what you were originally
Yeah.
saying, most people tend to think what you do or what we do is so easy and so like, well, lucky you kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they have no concept of how much work is involved in what we do, all
Right.
the behind the scenes, all the research, finding the right pieces to go together, making sure that they can actually be available and come together for
Yeah.
the actual installing. I mean, there's so much to it. There's so much to it. And though we are happy and love what we do, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think
It's
the
a lot
work
of
piece, though, I think a lot of the work piece is as a result of of the client, because I think about doing like my own stuff at home, and you doing your thing in your home, and it oftentimes, like, I do it therapeutically, like I don't even realize. Sometimes I'll get home and I'll start doing something, and 3 hours later, the room will be a different space than it was when I walked into it. And it's just because I sort of do things, like I said, therapeutically,
Right.
like and a client, you add a client into the equation, so now you're worried about their time, you're worried about their money, you're worried about their home, you're worried about their
aesthetic.
product, you're worried about making sure that you're meeting their expectations aesthetically, and and so all of those worries about the other person, now that you've added into the equation, I think that's really where it becomes work for us. But I still don't
But
feel
it is
like
a lot of work as far as somebody just kind of walking up to you and going, "Oh my God, you're so lucky, you're a designer," like it's this.
Or like when friends come and say, "Oh, will you do my house?"
Yeah.
That's funny.
That's a whole other thing.
We're just about through this whole thing, so I wanted to take a moment just to thank you guys for coming on and for talking and hanging out with me, because it's always it's intimidating to, like, and I promise I told you, Tears, that like live and on video, but it sinks in, and you're going to do this thing, and you guys have done a great job. You are so, like, everybody's going to love who you guys are and what you do, and the fact that you're brother and sister team. It's just all great. What I really want to know is when you have these moments where, like, oh crap, I can't believe this happened, and then you stick the landing and everything works out. But what are, like, I have that crazy story with Jeff, right? When I'm the scaffolding for his stupid ladder. What are some of your stories where you're like, and then this happened? Like, I'll give you one for us. So this very eccentric tech startup guy was like, I don't like these desks. Always had high end taste. He's like, can't be IKEA. It's got to be C2 and all these other things, right? And so we would go and we build all these things. We'd spend all this money on expediting desks, getting them built right then. And it's Easter weekend. And he gets them. We finish all of them, and he looks at them. I don't like them. And so his office manager, who was his girlfriend, she's like, he didn't like them. I need you guys to disassemble those, return them back to the store, and then pick out these desks that he does like. Can you get these desks built by Easter Sunday? And the answer is instantly yes, of course. Right. But and we did, and we got everything returned. It was nothing for them to do. We took care of the whole thing and billed them accordingly, right? Build them a hefty bill for having to change your mind, and he can afford that. That's great. So what are some of these things where you're like, oh my God, then this happened and we had to deal with it? What are some crazy things, but you're able to pool your resources and pull it off? Because that's the magic of it, right? Because you're pros.
Yeah.
I feel like there's always something that goes wrong on an install.
Every project
There's
has
always
a
something.
catastrophe. Like I said, that's why now we come with padding, we come with extra stuff, we come with
Yeah.
because there's always something. But
I don't think we've had any major horror stories though. I can't think of any.
well, I mean, so the one that always comes to mind for me, probably because it was so uncomfortable.
Remind me.
We had a client that asked us to do her wedding for her, and got through the whole thing up until the actual event. And they were getting married in a gazebo on a cliff that was like just a beautiful location. And we, she wanted us to do something very specific in terms of the florals.
It was at the Ritz in Half Moon Bay.
And we showed up, we set up the florals, and then she walked out, had the ceremony, and afterwards came to us and was very gracious and told us how everything was beautiful, but just for future reference, the color of the florals that we brought and draped her entire gazebo, which she had the wedding ceremony in, and her husband committed their lives to each other underneath, was essentially draped in the color of death in her culture. And so all of her family who had flown in from out of the country, and her parents, and basically the whole bride side of the ceremony, sat the entire time,
cloaked in death.
Mortified, because here's their daughter that they were so proud of, now getting married basically beneath the banner of death.
That was pretty bad.
Was pretty bad. And I know that you wanted us to come up with a solution, and I don't have a solution to that one. But that was every time somebody asks me for like the biggest catastrophe, that was the biggest.
I have the answer for
Pretty
that.
bad.
I have the answer
Yeah.
for this. Okay,
What
so
is it?
and we recently hosted a wedding for family friends, and they got married. And when every people, I have the opportunity to provide counsel, and they're getting married. I'm like, here's the best part about this whole thing. I know this is a problem, but in about 4 hours, you guys are going to be married, and it's going to be all over, and no one's going to care about this stuff. But it's going to happen. You're going to be married.
Well,
yeah.
here's the thing. She was so, like I said, she was
She was
just
so gracious.
so lovely about
She
it.
was so gracious.
And ultimately, the wedding was phenomenal. It was
Right.
beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. It just happened to be that we picked a
Had the
color
wrong
that
color.
meant death. So,
Yeah.
But
We were-
nobody else knew.
In
Right.
fairness, we
And-
were told fruit blossoms. We were not told what color.
Yeah.
Right.
It was assumed that we would know, but
Neither
we
here
didn't
nor there. But
know.
the point is that
We
Yeah.
gave her what she
But she
wanted,
was
what
very
we
happy.
thought. Yeah.
she was very happy. in the end.
I love it. That's so good. Yeah, it's funny the things that happen and that matter in the moment, and then later on. That's the other thing I've learned is when things get chaotic and crazy, and this goes to like my combat time, right? It's like, hey, there's no point in rushing around right now. Like whatever this problem is going to get solved. It just might take us to be deliberate right now, and so you just slow down when everybody else is panicking. You're like, I'm just going to think this through for a minute, and there's going to be, if there's one available, the solution's going to come better when I'm calm. And so I would just slow down and look around and think, like, what is the elegant way to do this? How do we get this done by doing less? And maybe I have to go down to Ace Hardware and buy a whole new thing and
Right.
spend 8 hours doing it. But if I just thought about it for a moment and just calmed myself, like 85% of the time, the answer was right there in front of us.
Mm.
Whatever it is, like that was always my advice. Like other people, like whatever you're doing, just slow down and just go, all right, I'm relaxed. Now look at it again. Stand on the other side of the room. How else can we ask yourself
Different
these questions?
perspective.
Right. Yeah. The perspective. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything you guys want to say in closing, let everybody know where to go to get your guys' wonderful services and everything else.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, the website is literally on the verge of a renovation, a revamp, a rework, but it's still up and available. So the website is filthygorgoushome.com.
Oh, home. Okay. I'll put that down.
And find out all kinds of information about us and what we do, and see some snapshots of a couple projects on there.
And lots more to come because we are
Yes.
updating
Yes,
as
yes,
we
yes.
speak.
All right. Let me wrap this thing up. Stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you